At my sister's wedding, my mom Loretta poured red wine all over me in front of everyone. That was the day I realized she never loved me the way she loved my sister. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved ones. My name is Camille, I'm 27, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been the quiet one, the one people overlook. My sister Savannah, 2 years younger than me, was always the star of the family. She's beautiful, charming, and the kind of person who lights up a room. People adore her without even trying, and my mom Loretta never missed a chance to remind me that Savannah was everything I wasn't. To her, family was a competition, and Savannah was the trophy she loved to show off. At the wedding, I kept to myself. I didn't want to steal attention. I just wanted to be there to support my sister, even if I knew my presence didn't matter much to them. During the reception, my mom came over with a glass of red wine in her hand. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was sharp, the kind of smile you give when you're about to hurt someone. She leaned in close and then, with a small flick of her wrist, the wine poured down the front of my dress. Gasps filled the room, and for a moment the music seemed to stop. My mom quickly covered her mouth and said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so clumsy." But I caught the smirk at the corner of her lips. She wanted this. She wanted me humiliated, drenched in front of her friends, while Savannah stood there glowing like the perfect bride. Guests whispered, some chuckled, and I stood frozen, my face burning, my chest tight. I excused myself, but inside I was breaking. My own mom chose to destroy me in public, just to remind me that I would never measure up. That was the moment something inside me changed. I wasn't going to let her keep winning. I wasn't going to let her keep stripping me of dignity. I promised myself right there, I would never feel powerless in front of her again. Growing up, I learned very early where I stood in my family. My mom Loretta made it clear that Savannah was her pride and joy, while I was just the extra child she had to deal with. Savannah got everything handed to her: pretty dresses, private lessons, attention at every school event. My mom showed up for all her dance recitals, clapping like she was the star of the show herself. When it came to me, she barely noticed if I was even in the room. Instead of being treated like a daughter, I was treated like the one who had to keep things running. If something broke, it was my fault. If Savannah cried, I was the one blamed. While she was being chauffeured to practices or pampered before pageants, I was at home folding laundry, washing dishes, or keeping the house quiet so she could rest. I wasn't asked what I wanted to do with my time. I was simply told. The worst part was how natural it all seemed to my mom. She never apologized, never showed even a flicker of guilt. It was just how she decided life should be. Savannah the shining daughter, me the shadow in the background. I remember sitting at the kitchen table sometimes, books spread out for school, and hearing Savannah giggle as my mom zipped up her glittery outfits for competitions. I didn't feel jealousy so much as emptiness, because deep down I understood that no matter what I did, I would never get that same look of pride directed at me. There was one day that still stings more than the rest. I was turning 16, and for the first time I had actually let myself hope. I had invited a few friends over and imagined a small celebration. I didn't need much, just a cake and maybe some balloons, something to make me feel seen. A week before, my mom came to me and said flatly, "We'll have to cancel. Savannah's pageant fees are due, and we can't afford both." She said it like my birthday was a luxury, like I was asking for too much. The party never happened. My friends went elsewhere that weekend, and I stayed home alone while Savannah twirled in her sparkly gown. That moment carved something deep into me. It wasn't just about the party. It was about the message. I wasn't important enough. My wants, my feelings, my milestones, they were disposable. My role was to sacrifice, to support, to stay out of the way. I began to see myself not as Loretta's daughter, but as her helper, her scapegoat, the one she could lean on or blame whenever it suited her. I grew up carrying that weight, and though I learned to stay quiet on the outside, inside I was slowly building walls. I told myself I couldn't keep expecting love from someone who had no intention of giving it. I was never her daughter in her eyes. I was her servant, and that realization shaped every choice I made moving forward. After the wedding, I couldn't shake what had happened. The red stain on my dress was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. I stayed quiet during the rest of the night, pretending to blend in, but inside I was boiling. When the music faded and most people were distracted, I pulled my mom aside. I wanted answers, or at least an acknowledgement that what she did was wrong. I asked her why she humiliated me in front of everyone. She didn't hesitate to twist the knife deeper. With that cold smile she always wore, she told me I should stop acting dramatic. Then she leaned closer and said, "You'll never be like Savannah. You should be grateful I even brought you here." Her words cut sharper than the laughter I heard earlier. In that moment, it was like she confirmed everything I had feared my whole life. I was never going to matter to her. I glanced around, hoping maybe Savannah would notice the hurt on my face. Instead, I saw her whispering with a group of guests, laughing like nothing was wrong. She looked up at me briefly, but instead of standing by me, she shrugged and walked back to our mom. That small gesture told me all I needed to know. My sister wasn't going to defend me. She had chosen her place beside Loretta, as always. The whispers in the crowd still echoed in my ears. People weren't even hiding their smirks. To them, I wasn't the woman whose dignity had just been stripped away. I was the punchline of a family joke. Every sideways glance, every muffled giggle made me feel like I had disappeared. It wasn't just embarrassment anymore. It was the realization that they enjoyed watching me fall. Something inside me hardened that night. I stopped waiting for respect, for kindness, for anything that looked like love. My mom could worship Savannah all she wanted. My sister could keep standing by her side, pretending I didn't exist. But if they thought I was going to stay in that role forever, they were wrong. I decided right then that I wasn't going to fight them for attention or beg for their approval. I would do something they couldn't laugh off. If Loretta loved Savannah so much, she could keep her golden child. I didn't care anymore. What I wanted was bigger than their acceptance. I wanted to take back control. Everything my mom had built around Savannah, every ounce of pride she got from flaunting her favorite daughter, I would take that away from her. That promise became the fire I carried with me after the wedding. It wasn't about getting even in a loud or messy way. It was about showing her that the daughter she dismissed was the one who would rise above her. She had made me feel like nothing for years, but I would make sure she remembered me. Not as her servant, not as her shadow, but as the one who finally broke her illusion of power. People thought I was fragile, someone who would always stay in the background. My mom Loretta believed I would never stand on my own. Savannah saw me as the sister who would always follow behind her. What they didn't know was that I had been building a life far away from their shadow. While they spent their time chasing beauty contests and social approval, I kept my head down and worked. I studied event planning and hospitality management, balancing my classes with long shifts at restaurants, hotels, and small venues. I learned how to handle demanding clients, how to manage a team under pressure, and how to make things run smoothly no matter the chaos. Every paycheck I earned was my own, and every skill I picked up gave me a confidence that no one could take away. I didn't want to rely on anyone, not even my family. Independence became my quiet victory. When my mom bragged about Savannah's accomplishments, I stayed silent because I didn't need her validation. Deep inside, I knew I was preparing myself for something bigger than applause. Through my studies, I became familiar with the wedding industry, and that's when I learned more about the place my mom was tied to. Loretta co-owned a wedding and event venue with her longtime friend Richard. To most people, Richard was just her business partner, but to me, he was one of the few adults who ever treated me with respect. Whenever I visited the venue as a child, he would stop to ask how school was going or listen to me talk about my small dreams. It wasn't much, but compared to the indifference I got at home, it meant everything. I started seeing the venue in a different light. It wasn't just a building filled with flowers and music. It was a business that shaped people's most important memories. And unlike my mom, who cared only about appearances, I knew how much work and heart went into creating something special for clients. I realized that if I ever wanted to make a mark, this was the perfect stage. That thought changed my entire perspective. My revenge didn't have to come from shouting or begging for attention. It didn't need to be some dramatic scene where I exposed my mom in front of a crowd. No, my way of fighting back would be subtle, controlled, and precise. If Loretta believed I was powerless, then the best way to prove her wrong was to step into the very world she thought she owned, and quietly take it piece by piece. I no longer cared about convincing her to see my worth. I cared about building something she couldn't ignore, something that would shake the ground she stood on. My strength wasn't in loud gestures. It was in patience, hard work, and the knowledge that one day, I would take away the one thing she valued most. When I finally decided to step closer to the world my mom thought she controlled, I started with small steps. Richard still worked at the venue almost every day, handling details my mom often overlooked. One evening, I stayed behind after one of my jobs and asked if he needed any extra help. He gave me a curious look but agreed. That simple yes opened the door I had been waiting for. At first, I handled the tasks no one else wanted. I rearranged decorations when clients changed their minds, kept track of booking schedules, and double-checked catering lists. It didn't feel like much, but every small effort mattered. Slowly, I began to see the difference between how my mom treated the venue and how Richard and I worked. Where she cared only for appearances, I cared about people. When something went wrong, I fixed it instead of making excuses. The more time I spent there, the more I realized how much clients valued being heard. Brides who walked in stressed left with relief after I listened to them and offered solutions. Families thanked me for catching mistakes before their big days. Their appreciation gave me confidence, and soon they started asking for me directly. They didn't want Loretta, they wanted the woman who actually paid attention. Richard noticed too. He saw how guests responded when I was around, how smoothly things ran when I managed even small details. One afternoon he pulled me aside and said, "You've got a natural touch with this. People trust you." Hearing that from him felt different than hearing any compliment before. It wasn't empty. It was recognition of the effort I had been putting in quietly for years. With time, he let me handle more than decorations and schedules. I began managing entire events from start to finish, coordinating with vendors, setting timelines, and guiding staff. The nights grew longer, but I didn't mind. Each successful event was proof that I could stand in this space and thrive. And while my mom was still tied to the business on paper, the reality was shifting. Clients weren't talking about her anymore. They were talking about me. It didn't take long before I could feel the change in the air. Richard relied on me for decisions my mom once made, and the staff followed my lead without hesitation. Loyalty was moving, almost naturally, in my direction. My mom didn't see it yet, but the venue she flaunted as her pride was slowly becoming mine in spirit. I wasn't rushing or shouting about it. I was simply showing up, working harder, and proving my worth without needing anyone's approval. Each step brought me closer to something my mom never thought I was capable of. And the best part was, she had no idea her grip was slipping. The more time I spent at the venue, the clearer it became that my mom Loretta was driving it into the ground. She had grown careless, acting as if the place would run itself while she sat back and took the credit. Money became her main focus. She cut corners, argued about expenses, and pocketed more than her share while ignoring the damage it caused. Clients who once trusted the venue left disappointed, yet she brushed it off as if their opinions didn't matter. Savannah was pulled into it too. My mom started parading her around the business, showing her off as the face of the venue. She introduced her to clients as if she was part of the team, even though Savannah knew nothing about planning or hospitality. She was there for photos, for smiles, for charm. But she couldn't answer questions, fix problems, or calm stressed couples. Richard noticed the difference immediately. He stayed polite in front of my mom, but I saw the way his jaw tightened whenever Savannah was pushed forward while real issues were ignored. Behind closed doors, tension grew between them. My mom demanded more money, insisted on decisions that harmed the venue's reputation, and dismissed Richard's concerns. She treated him less like a partner and more like an obstacle standing in her way. He tried to reason with her, but she never listened. She only cared about appearances, about making Savannah look like a princess in a business built on hard work. One late evening, after another argument between them, Richard found me finishing up in the main hall. He sat down beside me, rubbing his forehead, and for the first time he spoke honestly. He told me he was tired of fighting with her, tired of watching the place he helped build lose its meaning. Then he looked at me and said, "If this place is going to survive, it needs someone with your heart, not someone who only cares about appearances." Those words hit me harder than anything. For years I had been invisible in my family, but here was someone who saw the truth. It wasn't just that he appreciated my work. It was that he believed I could be the one to keep the venue alive. In that moment, I felt the first real spark of hope. The control Loretta thought she held so tightly was slipping through her hands. Her greed, her obsession with Savannah, her arrogance, it was all cracking the foundation she stood on. For the first time, I realized I didn't just have a role here. I had power. I didn't need to fight her in the open. Her downfall was already in motion, and she was the one setting it up herself. All I had to do was keep showing up, keep working, and wait for the moment when everything she built on false pride would finally collapse. The shift came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, An important client arrived at the venue for a final walkthrough. It was a big deal, the kind of event that could bring in more business if handled well. My mom Loretta was supposed to meet them, but she never showed. Instead, she was off at some social gathering, convinced her presence wasn't needed. I stepped in without thinking. I guided the client through every detail, answered their questions, and reassured them when something felt off. By the time they left, they were smiling and confident. Richard had been watching the entire time. Later that evening, he pulled me aside and said he wanted to make it official. He offered me partial ownership. My first reaction was hesitation. I knew what accepting meant, an open battle with my mom. For years I had avoided direct conflict, but the memory of that wedding night, her laughing while I stood drenched in wine, came back like a wound that never closed. That moment reminded me why I couldn't back down. While I was quietly stepping into responsibility, Savannah had her own plans. She was pregnant and wanted her baby shower at the venue. Not only did she expect the best, but she demanded it be done for free. Loretta, of course, agreed instantly, praising her and promising the event would be perfect without considering costs or commitments. Richard didn't hesitate to say no. He explained the venue was a business, not a family playground. For the first time, I stood beside him, making it clear I supported his decision. That refusal turned into a storm. Loretta exploded, furious that I dared to stand against her. She accused me of using Richard, of trying to steal what wasn't mine. Her voice was sharp as she called me a parasite, saying I lived off scraps and had nothing of my own. The words stung, but instead of shrinking back, I finally answered her. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "No, Mom. I'm the future you never believed in." The room went silent after that. Richard stood firm, and Savannah sulked, but I felt something new inside me. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to my mom's cruelty. I was pushing back. Accepting partial ownership wasn't just about business anymore. It was about reclaiming the dignity she had taken from me all my life. From that day forward, the balance shifted. I wasn't just helping at the venue. I was part of it, shaping it, protecting it, and building it into something stronger than Loretta ever imagined. And she knew it, even if she refused to admit it. My mom Loretta never accepted the idea of me being part of the venue. Even after Richard gave me a share, she looked at me as if I was intruding on something that only belonged to her and Savannah. Instead of working with me, she started plotting behind closed doors. She believed she could push me out just as easily as she had pushed me aside my whole life. One afternoon, Richard called me into his office. He had found documents on his desk that didn't look right. They were contracts with forged signatures, paperwork that would have given Loretta full control of the business. If Richard hadn't spotted the inconsistencies, she might have succeeded in erasing me from the venue completely. My chest tightened as I stared at the papers. It wasn't enough for her to insult me or dismiss me. She wanted to erase me from something I had poured my heart into. Richard's face was calm, but I could see disappointment in his eyes. He had trusted Loretta for years, and now she had crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. He leaned back in his chair and said, "This proves it. She doesn't care about this place. She only cares about herself." Then he turned to me and made a decision that changed everything. He told me he was transferring his share of the business to me. Legally. Permanently. I couldn't find words at first. My throat tightened, and I shook my head, not sure I had heard him right. But Richard was serious. He explained that he had watched me put in the effort, treat clients with respect, and give the venue the dedication it needed. He believed I could carry it forward, even if Loretta never supported me. When the paperwork was finalized, Loretta's reaction was exactly what I expected, rage mixed with disbelief. She stormed into the office, demanding answers, yelling about betrayal. She called Richard disloyal, accused me of manipulating him, and acted as if she was the victim. But none of her shouting could undo the truth. The venue she once paraded as her pride was now half mine. Standing in that office, I felt tears sting my eyes, but they weren't happy tears. They came from years of swallowing pain, of being told I was worthless, of being treated like I didn't matter. For so long, I had kept those feelings buried, but in that moment, the weight of it all broke open. I cried not because I won something, but because the little girl inside me had finally been seen, finally been given a place she was denied her entire life. It was more than a business change. It was the first real crack in my mom's empire, and this time, there was no going back. Savannah's anniversary party was supposed to be another showcase for my mom, Loretta. She loved moments like these, big gatherings, important guests, and a chance to parade Savannah as her shining star. For weeks she bragged about how perfect the evening would be, acting like she still had full control of the venue. What she didn't realize was that things had already shifted, and this time, the spotlight would not belong to her. When the day of the party came, Loretta walked in expecting to give orders. But the staff didn't look to her anymore. They came to me for direction. I had already spent hours preparing, checking the lighting, arranging the decor, making sure the catering was timed perfectly. Everything ran with precision, and the guests noticed the smoothness right away. Loretta, on the other hand, seemed lost in her own building. She tried to bark instructions, but no one moved. Richard's words and the legal papers had made everything official. I was the co-owner now, and people respected that. Savannah entered in her glittering gown, smiling for everyone's attention, but even she seemed uneasy when she noticed that her mother wasn't being treated as the center of the evening anymore. As the night went on, I handled every detail with care. Guests complimented the layout, the service, the atmosphere. Some even came up to me directly to say how professional everything felt. I could see Loretta watching from the side, her face tightening every time someone praised me. For once, I wasn't the background shadow. I was the one shaping the moment. Then came the toast. The room grew quiet as I stood with a glass in hand. My voice was steady, though inside I could feel the weight of the moment. I thanked Richard for believing in me, I thanked the staff for their dedication, and I thanked the clients for trusting our venue with their special memories. But I never mentioned Loretta's name. Not once. It wasn't out of pettiness. It was a deliberate silence, and it spoke louder than any insult I could have thrown at her. The guests caught on quickly. I saw heads turning, whispers passing from table to table. People who had once admired my mom now questioned her place. Her reputation, the image she worked so hard to build, started to crumble right in front of her. Loretta's face turned red, and before the evening ended, she stormed out, heels clicking against the floor, leaving Savannah standing there trying to save face. But the damage was done. Everyone saw it. This wasn't Loretta's empire anymore. For me, it wasn't about embarrassing her in front of everyone. It was about reclaiming my voice, showing her and the world that I wasn't the servant she always treated me as. The silence of leaving her name out of that toast was my revenge, and it cut deeper than anything else I could have said. Months passed, and everything shifted in ways my mom Loretta never expected. The whispers from Savannah's anniversary party followed her everywhere. Clients no longer trusted her. They wanted me to handle their events. Her polished image cracked, and people saw what I had lived with my whole life. Slowly, the respect she clung to slipped through her fingers. Even Savannah began to keep her distance. For years, she leaned on our mother's approval, but now she saw the damage it brought. Their bond weakened, and for the first time, I wasn't the one left out, it was Loretta. She had built her world on favoritism and control, and when those crumbled, she had nothing left to stand on. Richard, who had always been steady, decided it was time for him to step away. He called me into his office one afternoon and told me he was ready to retire. Then he signed the papers, transferring his remaining share of the venue to me. With that, I became the sole owner. The place that once represented my mother's pride was now entirely mine. I didn't celebrate with loud words or rub it in her face. Instead, I walked through the same hall where she poured wine on me months before. I remembered the sting of humiliation, the laughter, the way she smirked as if my pain meant nothing. Standing there again, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt strong, calm, and free. The hall was no longer a reminder of shame. It was proof of how far I had come. Loretta had lost the power she loved to wield, and I had gained the one thing she never thought I deserved: control over my own life. My revenge didn't come with shouting or scenes. It came with quiet victories, with patience, and with refusing to give up on myself. Sometimes revenge isn't fire and fury. Sometimes it's just quietly taking everything they swore you could never have. If you felt my story, please subscribe, like, and share with your loved ones. Your support means the world to me.